March 12, 1943. Kummersdorf Proving Ground, 40 kilometers south of Berlin. The morning frost still clung to the metal as Hauptmann Werner Schroif watched his crew maneuver the Panzer III Ausf J into position. The tank's 50mm frontal armor had seemed adequate in Russia, invincible in France. But the object lying on the test bench beside the firing range changed everything. An American rocket launcher, captured 3 weeks earlier near Tébourba in Tunisia, delivered to Germany's premier weapons testing facility with urgent orders from the Waffenamt. The device appeared almost comically primitive. A simple steel tube, barely 5 feet long, weighing just 13 pounds. No complex mechanisms, no sophisticated optics, nothing suggesting the engineering precision German ordnance officers had come to expect from weapons capable of threatening armor. Yet intelligence reports from North Africa told a different story. American infantrymen, soldiers with minimal training, were shouldering these tubes and destroying German tanks. Schroif had commanded panzers since Poland. He had fought in France, survived Russia's winter. His crew trusted their armor the way sailors trust their ship. That trust was about to be tested in ways none of them anticipated. Within hours, the mathematics of armored warfare would shift beneath their feet. The shaped charge principle, combined with American mass production, had created something German tankers feared more than Soviet artillery. Every American soldier potentially carried tank-killing capability in a weapon costing $18 to manufacture. The psychological implications were staggering. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The weapon's journey to Kummersdorf had begun in chaos. Operation Torch, America's November 1942 invasion of North Africa, introduced the 2.36-inch rocket launcher M1 to combat. The weapon bore an unofficial name already familiar to American troops. Soldiers called it the Bazooka, after comedian Bob Burns' novelty musical instrument. The resemblance was superficial, but the name stuck. What wasn't superficial was the weapon's revolutionary capability. For the first time in modern warfare, individual infantrymen possessed portable anti-tank firepower. The bazooka's origins traced to desperate improvisation at Aberdeen Proving Ground in early 1942. Captain Edward Uhl faced a deceptively simple problem. The Army had developed an effective shaped charge grenade, the M10, capable of penetrating substantial armor. But the grenade weighed too much to throw effectively. Existing delivery systems proved inadequate. Walking past a scrap pile, Uhl noticed a length of tubing matching the grenade's diameter. Within hours, he had fashioned a crude shoulder-fired launcher. For sights, he bent a wire coat hanger. The May 1942 demonstration pitted Uhl's improvised weapon against 5 sophisticated spigot mortars, all considered more promising by ordnance officials. The mortars fired repeatedly at a moving tank target. None achieved hits. Then Uhl shouldered his tube launcher with its coat hanger sights. Direct hit. He fired again. Another hit. Major General Gladion M. Barnes, Chief of Research and Engineering, immediately ordered 5,000 units. The simplicity was elegant. The implications were devastating. The shaped charge principle, utilizing the Monroe effect, focused explosive energy into a superheated jet capable of penetrating armor like a cutting torch. 8 ounces of pentalite explosive could burn through 5 inches of steel. The rocket's copper liner, precisely shaped, collapsed inward upon detonation, forming a plasma jet traveling at speeds exceeding 20,000 feet per second. Temperature at the penetration point reached thousands of degrees. No armor of practical thickness could resist such concentrated energy at close range. General Electric received the first production contract. The M1 launcher entered production at breakneck speed. American factories, already mobilized for war production, adapted rapidly. The weapon's simplicity allowed distributed manufacturing. Companies without military experience successfully produced components. By autumn 1942, thousands of bazookas were rolling off assembly lines, destined for troops preparing to invade North Africa. But Operation Torch revealed serious problems. General Dwight D. Eisenhower discovered on invasion eve that none of his troops had received instruction in the weapon's use. The early M6 rockets proved catastrophically unreliable in desert conditions. Many failed to detonate. Others stuck in launch tubes and exploded, killing operators. These failures cost American lives. They also provided German intelligence with captured samples. German commanders in Tunisia immediately recognized the weapon's potential. The simple tube and rocket represented a fundamental challenge to armored warfare doctrine. If perfected and mass-produced, such weapons could negate Germany's armored advantages. Captured bazookas were shipped to Germany under armed guard. The samples reached Berlin in late January 1943. General Wolfgang Martini, chief of Luftwaffe Signals Intelligence and among Germany's most senior technical experts, examined the captured weapons personally. His initial assessment combined professional admiration with strategic alarm. The Americans had created something remarkable, not through superior engineering, but through pragmatic design optimized for mass production and ease of use. The shaped charge warhead measured 60 mm in diameter, simple electrical ignition, open tube design eliminating recoil, weight permitting single soldier operation, range sufficient for infantry combat. The weapon embodied American industrial philosophy. Adequate performance, overwhelming quantity. Martini's report reached the Waffenamt within days. Germany must develop a similar weapon immediately. But recognition of the threat differed from countering it. German industry faced constraints, American factories did not. Material shortages, Allied bombing, dispersed production facilities. More fundamentally, German military culture emphasized technical sophistication over crude effectiveness. The bazooka offended German engineering sensibilities precisely because it worked so well despite apparent crudity. The Kummersdorf tests would determine the captured weapon's actual capabilities. Hauptmann Schroif's Panzer III represented typical German armor deployed in North Africa and Russia. The Ausf J variant featured improved protection, 50 mm of frontal hull armor, 30 mm on the sides. Additional 20 mm plates had been welded to the front, bringing total frontal thickness to 70 mm. This seemed adequate against most Allied anti-tank weapons. Soviet 45 mm guns struggled to penetrate at combat ranges. British 2-pounder guns achieved penetration only at close range against side armor, but shaped charges operated on different principles than kinetic penetrators. Armor thickness mattered less than the jet's energy density. The Monroe effect didn't care about sloped armor or hardened steel, it burned through metal at the molecular level. The test protocol was straightforward. Fire captured American rockets at the Panzer III from various ranges and angles. Document penetration. Assess crew survivability. Determine tactical implications. The American rockets had been carefully examined. Each M6 warhead contained precisely measured pentalite explosive. The shaped charge cone, machined from copper, formed the critical component. Upon detonation, the explosive collapsed the copper liner inward, forming the armor-penetrating jet. Things were well understood. German scientists had explored shaped charge principles since the 1930s, but weaponizing the principle in a man-portable system that actually worked in combat conditions proved elusive. The first test firing commenced at 1000 hours. Range, 50 meters. Target, Panzer III frontal hull armor. The captured bazooka was mounted in a test fixture. German technicians, following procedures reverse-engineered from the weapon's simple design, loaded an M6 rocket. The electrical contact engaged, fire. The rocket motor ignited with a distinctive whoosh, propelling the warhead downrange. Flight time, a fraction of a second. Impact. The shaped charge detonated. What happened next shattered assumptions German tankers had carried since France. The copper jet penetrated the Panzer III's frontal armor completely, not a near miss, not a partial penetration requiring lucky shot placement. Complete penetration. The plasma jet burned through 70 mm of steel armor as though it were paper. Inside the tank, the jet would have killed or wounded the crew, ignited ammunition, destroyed equipment. The Panzer III was combat ineffective. From a weapon weighing 13 pounds, fired by a single soldier, Schroif examined the penetration hole, approximately 6 centimeters in diameter. Clean edges, metal melted and pushed inward. The damage pattern was distinctive. This wasn't mechanical penetration like an armor-piercing shell. This was thermal destruction at temperatures exceeding steel's melting point. The armor hadn't been broken. It had been vaporized. Additional tests followed throughout the morning. Side armor at 30 mm thickness, rear armor at 20 mm. Each test produced the same result: complete penetration. The shaped charge warhead proved devastating against any armor thickness the Panzer III possessed. Even non-penetrating hits on tracks, vision devices, or weapons caused significant damage. The psychological impact was immediate. The German test observers understood the implications perfectly. Every American infantry company would eventually receive multiple bazookas. Every squad might possess tank-killing capability. German panzers, designed to operate as predators dominating the battlefield through armor and firepower, faced transformation into prey. Any soldier in any position might destroy a tank worth hundreds of thousands of Reichsmarks with an $18 rocket. The afternoon tests explored weaknesses. Maximum effective range proved limited. Beyond 100 meters, accuracy decreased significantly. The rocket's trajectory curved noticeably at extended ranges. This suggested tactical countermeasures: maintain distance from infantry, suppress bazooka teams with machine gun fire before they achieved firing positions. But urban combat, forests, broken terrain, made distance maintenance impossible. In close terrain, German tanks would face constant threat from weapons they couldn't see until rockets were already flying. Schroif's official report was brutally honest. The American rocket launcher represented a fundamental threat to German armored operations. While individual tanks might survive through luck or crew skill, systematic deployment of such weapons would impose unacceptable losses. The weapon's simplicity meant American industry could produce them in quantities German countermeasures couldn't match. Training requirements were minimal. Any soldier could learn basic operation in hours. The weapon gave American infantry organic anti-tank capability without requiring specialized units or complex logistics. The Waffenamt's response was predictable. Germany would develop its own version immediately. The result would be the Panzer Schreck, scaling the bazooka's 60 mm warhead to 88 mm. But this revealed critical German weakness. While German engineers could create superior individual weapons, they lacked America's production capacity. Germany would eventually produce approximately 290,000 Panzer Schrecks. America would produce hundreds of thousands of bazookas. The disparity in industrial capacity meant German forces would always face more enemy anti-tank weapons than they could field themselves. But theoretical understanding differed from battlefield reality. The Kummersdorf tests occurred in controlled conditions: clean weapons, prepared ammunition, measured ranges. Combat would prove far more brutal and unpredictable. German tankers were about to discover that knowing about a threat and surviving it were entirely different propositions. The reports from North Africa grew increasingly alarming through spring 1943. American troops were overcoming the M1's initial unreliability. Improved rockets, better training, tactical doctrine refined through combat experience. The weapon that had disappointed at Kasserine Pass in February was becoming genuinely effective by April. Sicily's invasion in July 1943 would provide the bazooka's first major test against German heavy armor. The results would shock panzer commanders who had considered their Tigers and Panthers invulnerable to infantry weapons. What the Kummersdorf tests had proven in theory, American infantry would demonstrate in blood and fire across Sicily's volcanic slopes. The transformation of German armored doctrine began not with strategic defeat, but with a 13-pound tube and a 2.36-inch rocket. The mathematics were elegantly devastating. A bazooka cost $18. A Panzer III cost 200,000 Reichsmarks. Yet that $18 tube could transform expensive engineering into burning wreckage. The cost-exchange ratio defied military logic as Germany understood it. Superior technology should defeat crude weapons. Training and doctrine should overcome material quantity. But industrial warfare operated on different principles. The nation that could arm every soldier with effective weapons would prevail over the nation that armed few with perfect ones. This lesson, written in penetrated armor and destroyed tanks, would reshape German tactical thinking from Sicily to Berlin. The Kummersdorf test results circulated through Wehrmacht headquarters with remarkable speed. Panzer commanders read the reports with growing alarm. The American weapon wasn't theoretical, it wasn't experimental, it was in production, in the hands of enemy infantry, and it worked. What German tankers couldn't yet grasp was how thoroughly the bazooka would transform battlefield psychology. Tanks had restored mobility to modern warfare after World War I's static trenches. Armor protection meant tank crews fought from positions of relative safety. Infantry faced tanks with limited options, mostly requiring suicidal close approaches or specialized weapons. The bazooka eliminated that calculus. Now infantry possessed practical tank-killing capability at tactically relevant ranges. The predator-prey relationship reversed. German tank crews entering combat against bazooka-equipped infantry would experience fundamental psychological transformation. Confidence would erode. Aggression would give way to caution. The crew that had terrorized Europe through revolutionary armored warfare would learn to fear enemy infantry more than opposing tanks. This transformation began at Kummersdorf on March 12, 1943, when the first American rocket penetrated 70 millimeters of German steel. Hauptmann Schroif knew, watching that clean hole burned through his panzer's frontal armor, that nothing would ever be the same. The era of armored invincibility had ended. The age of the infantry anti-tank weapon had begun, and Germany, entering this new era with inadequate industrial capacity, insufficient material resources, and an enemy possessing both in overwhelming quantity, faced a future where every American soldier potentially carried the weapon that could destroy any German tank. The bazooka had passed its test. German armor had failed. What remained was discovering how high the price of that failure would climb across the battlefields still to come. The answer would be written in destroyed tanks, killed crews, and shattered assumptions about how modern armored warfare actually worked when the enemy possessed weapons that made armor irrelevant. The reports from Kummersdorf reached Field Marshal Erwin Rommel in North Africa within days. The Desert Fox, commanding Panzerarmee Africa, read the technical assessments with professional detachment that masked deeper concern. His tank forces had encountered the American bazookas during the Kasserine Pass offensive in February 1943. Those early encounters had been inconclusive. The M1 launchers proved unreliable. American troops lacked training. Many rockets failed to detonate. But Rommel possessed strategic vision his subordinates sometimes lacked. He understood that first-generation weapons always displayed teething problems. The Americans would fix the reliability issues. They would train their troops properly. And when they did, German armor would face systematic threat unlike anything encountered in Poland, France, or even Russia. The Sicily campaign would prove Rommel's concerns prophetic. Operation Husky, the Allied invasion of Sicily, commenced on July 10, 1943. American forces landed at Gela, establishing beachheads under heavy fire. German commanders responded with armored counterattacks designed to drive the invaders into the sea. Schwerpanzerabteilung 504, equipped with 17 Tiger I heavy tanks, received orders to attack American positions around Gela. The Tiger crews maintained absolute confidence. Their massive tanks, weighing 56 tons with 100 millimeters of frontal armor, had proven virtually impervious to Allied weapons in Tunisia. The Americans ahead possessed nothing capable of threatening Tigers at combat ranges, or so German commanders believed. The attack commenced at dawn on July 11th. Tigers advanced toward Gela through dust and morning heat. American infantry, dug into rubble and buildings, initially appeared to retreat. German commanders interpreted this as panic. The Americans were fleeing before superior armor, exactly as doctrine predicted. But the retreat was tactical deception. American soldiers, now equipped with improved M1A1 launchers and reliable M6A1 rockets, had learned from North African failures. They were drawing German tanks into Gala's narrow streets, into terrain where range advantages meant nothing, and every window potentially concealed a bazooka team. The first Tiger was struck at approximately 0730 hours. The rocket hit the tank's side armor, penetrating the 30mm steel and detonating inside the crew compartment. The Tiger stopped, smoke billowing from hatches. Crew members who escaped the burning tank reported complete surprise. They had seen no anti-tank gun, heard no artillery. The attack came from a building they had already passed, fired by infantry they hadn't considered threatening. Within minutes, additional Tigers came under fire. Rockets flew from windows, doorways, rubble piles. They struck tracks, immobilizing tanks that became stationary targets for additional rockets. They hit turret rings, jamming traversing mechanisms. They found vision devices, blinding crews and forcing commanders to button up, reducing situational awareness. Hauptmann Wilhelm von Rosen, commanding one of the Tigers, filed an after-action report that captured the psychological transformation occurring in real time. "We advanced confidently," von Rosen wrote, "certain our armor protected us from anything American infantry might possess." Then the rockets came, not from anti-tank guns we could identify and suppress, but from invisible positions all around us. The first explosion struck our forward left track. We were immobilized instantly. Additional rockets followed before we could even identify firing positions. The sound inside the tank was deafening. Each impact, even those that didn't penetrate, created tremendous vibration. Crews could hear explosions, feel impacts, smell burning metal. We knew the next rocket might find a weak spot and kill us all. For the first time since Poland, I felt genuine fear inside a tank. The German counterattack at Gela failed completely. Of 17 Tigers committed, 4 were destroyed outright. Several others damaged beyond immediate repair. The survivors withdrew to defensive positions, their commanders reporting that American infantry possessed weapons making urban combat impossible. This assessment would have seemed absurd 6 months earlier. German armor had conquered cities across Europe, but those conquests occurred before every American soldier potentially carried a tank-killing rocket launcher. The tactical implications manifested immediately across Sicily. German tanks that had advanced aggressively in North Africa now moved cautiously, constantly scanning for bazooka teams. Night operations became impossibly dangerous. In darkness, rockets flew from unseen positions, and German crews couldn't identify targets for suppressive fire. Urban areas, previously dominated by armor, transformed into death traps. Every advance required massive infantry support to clear buildings and suppress anti-tank teams. This slowed operations to walking pace, negating German mechanized warfare's fundamental advantage: speed. Lieutenant Hans Becker, commanding a Panzer IV in the Hermann Göring division, described the psychological burden. "We began welding spare track links and sheet metal to our tanks," Becker reported in his war diary dated July 18, 1943. These Schürzen were supposed to detonate shaped charges prematurely, reducing penetration. But they made our tanks heavier and less maneuverable. The engine strained, mechanical reliability suffered. More significantly, these improvised additions admitted what we all knew but didn't want to acknowledge. Our armor wasn't adequate anymore. We were improvising protection because factory armor couldn't protect us from American rockets. This demoralized crews more than enemy fire. German engineering was supposed to be superior. Our tanks were supposed to dominate. Instead, we were welding scrap metal for protection against weapons that cost less than a week's pay for a factory worker. The statistical evidence revealed transformation even more dramatically than individual accounts. In France, 1940, German tanks achieved approximately 10-to-1 kill ratios against Allied armor. German tactical superiority, combined with superior coordination and doctrine, overwhelmed numerically superior but poorly employed Allied forces. By late 1943 in Italy, German tanks facing bazooka-equipped Americans approached 1-to-1 loss ratios. The Wehrmacht's primary advantage had evaporated. Not because American tanks improved dramatically. American Shermans remained inferior to German Panthers and Tigers in direct tank versus tank combat, but bazookas eliminated the need for tank versus tank engagements on German terms. American infantry destroyed German tanks before they could engage in the mobile armored warfare at which German crews excelled. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The bazooka struck at Nazi ideology's core. The regime promoted technological sophistication as evidence of Aryan superiority. Complex Tigers and Panthers supposedly demonstrated German genius triumphing over inferior opponents. But American pragmatism, mass-producing simple, effective weapons proved superior to German perfectionism. A weapon designed in months, manufactured by companies with no military experience, operated by soldiers with minimal training, was systematically destroying the Wehrmacht's most sophisticated armored vehicles. Training programs ensured bazooka effectiveness across American forces. Unlike German anti-tank weapons requiring extensive training, soldiers learned basic bazooka operation in hours. The weapon's simplicity meant cooks, clerks, and supply personnel could become tank killers if circumstances required. This universality transformed battlefield dynamics fundamentally. German commanders never knew which American soldiers might produce bazookas. Every advance, every patrol, every engagement carried the risk that ordinary infantry possessed extraordinary tank-killing capability. Combat experience refined tactics rapidly throughout late 1943. Bazooka teams learned paired operations. One team targeted tracks for immobilization, another sought penetration opportunities while the tank was stationary. White phosphorus rockets, while not armor-piercing, could blind crews and force tank abandonment. Smart teams used terrain effectively, waiting until tanks passed before firing into vulnerable rear armor where protection measured just 20 to 30 millimeters. The Italian campaign demonstrated the bazooka's evolution from emergency weapon to tactical cornerstone. In mountainous terrain around Monte Cassino, bazooka teams operated as snipers, sometimes waiting days for perfect shots. They learned that exhaust grills were vulnerable. Turret rings could be targeted where armor plates joined. Even Tigers had weak spots where mechanical necessity created structural vulnerabilities. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, commanding German forces in Italy, acknowledged the crisis in a December 1943 report to Berlin. American rocket launchers have imposed unacceptable losses on our armored forces, Kesselring wrote. Tanks cannot operate effectively in close terrain without massive infantry support. This requirement negates the mobility advantages our panzers require. Urban combat has become suicide without overwhelming force. Night operations are impossible. The Americans have created a weapon that fundamentally alters tactical calculus. We must develop effective countermeasures immediately, or accept that armored operations in Italy will continue suffering prohibitive casualties. But developing effective countermeasures proved impossible given Germany's strategic situation. The Panzerschreck program, initiated following the Kummersdorf tests, produced a weapon superior to the American bazooka in some respects. The 88mm warhead generated greater penetration than the American 60mm round. But the Panzerschreck proved heavier, less mobile, and revealed firing positions through massive backblast smoke. More critically, Germany produced Panzerschrecks in thousands, while America produced bazookas in hundreds of thousands. Even superior individual weapons couldn't overcome industrial capacity disparities. The strategic gap widened as American production accelerated through 1944. By the Normandy invasion in June, American rifle companies each carried multiple bazookas. Marine divisions in the Pacific Theater were authorized 172 bazookas each. Every infantry squad potentially possessed tank-killing capability. German tankers, trained as predators, had become prey hunted by opponents they couldn't see until rockets were already flying. Oberst Hans von Luck, commanding the 21st Panzer Division's battle group, described the psychological transformation in his post-war memoir. "We had conquered Europe through blitzkrieg," von Luck wrote. "Speed, surprise, concentrated armor breaking through defensive lines and causing chaos in enemy rear areas. This required confidence, crews charging into enemy positions, certain their armor protected them from infantry weapons. The bazooka destroyed that confidence, utterly. Every advance became tentative. Every village required clearing before tanks could pass safely. Every night position required infantry perimeters, preventing bazooka teams from approaching. We fought defensively even when attacking. The psychological advantage we had possessed since Poland was gone. American infantry feared our tanks less than we feared their rockets. This reversal was more devastating than any tactical defeat. German tactical doctrine evolved in response, but every adaptation imposed costs. Tanks required constant infantry screens, reducing mobility to infantry pace. Night operations, once a German specialty exploiting superior crew training and equipment, became impossibly dangerous. Bazooka teams operated effectively in darkness, firing from positions German crews couldn't identify for counter-fire. Urban combat transformed from tactical option to absolute prohibition. German commanders avoided cities whenever possible. When urban fighting proved unavoidable, tank losses mounted catastrophically. Statistics from the Italian campaign revealed the transformation quantitatively. German 10th Army reported that during October 1943 operations near the Volturno River, armored losses to American bazookas exceeded losses to American tanks and anti-tank guns combined. This pattern continued through the winter. German panzers faced greater threat from American infantry than from American armor. The implications for Wehrmacht doctrine were profound and unsettling. The weapon's psychological impact extended beyond tank crews. German infantry learned that American bazookas proved equally effective against fortifications. Bunkers, pillboxes, machine gun nests all became vulnerable to shaped-charge warheads. Artillery crews discovered their guns could be destroyed by infantry rocket fire. Headquarters units worried about raiding parties using bazookas against command posts. Universal vulnerability existed where German doctrine assumed armored vehicles provided mobile protection. By early 1944, approaching the D-Day invasion, the transformation was absolute. German tank crews spoke of survival, not glory. They knew hundreds of thousands of American soldiers waited across the English Channel, many armed with the weapon that had haunted their nightmares since Sicily. The Wehrmacht, which had conquered much of Europe through revolutionary armored warfare, now feared enemy infantry more than opposing tanks. This psychological inversion marked fundamental defeat more completely than lost battles or destroyed equipment. The Eastern Front provided different but equally disturbing lessons. Soviet forces received American bazookas through Lend-Lease, beginning in late 1942. Russian soldiers, already proficient in close-quarters anti-tank combat using grenades and Molotov cocktails, incorporated bazookas enthusiastically. The combination of Soviet tactical aggression and American firepower proved devastating. German panzer commanders reported that Soviet infantry equipped with American rocket launchers showed even less fear of German armor than their Western counterparts. Russian soldiers approached to point-blank range before firing, ensuring penetration even against sloped armor. German crews found Eastern Front combat, already brutal, becoming psychologically unbearable as enemy infantry acquired weapons, making every engagement potentially fatal. Hauptmann Otto Carius, one of Germany's most successful tank commanders with over 150 verified kills, described bazooka encounters in his memoir. "The shaped charge principle is elegant physics," Carius wrote. "But experiencing it from inside a tank is pure terror. You hear the rocket motor's distinctive sound. You know it's flying toward you. You know your armor might not stop it. In that fraction of a second before impact, you understand that all your training, all your experience, all your crew's skill might not matter. An enemy soldier you can't see, who might have received his launcher yesterday, might kill you with a single lucky shot. This knowledge corrodes courage more effectively than artillery barrages or air attacks. Those threats you can analyze tactically. The bazooka threat is random, universal, and inescapable. German countermeasures proved inadequate or counterproductive. Shirts and armor skirts, intended to detonate shaped charges prematurely, provided marginal protection at substantial cost. The added weight stressed already overtaxed engines and transmissions. Mechanical reliability declined. More concerning, the improvised protection admitted what German propaganda couldn't acknowledge. Superior German engineering couldn't protect panzers from American industrial pragmatism. Every welded plate, every makeshift addition, told German crews that factory protection was inadequate. This psychological admission demoralized forces already facing overwhelming Allied material superiority. Tactical adaptations imposed different costs. Maintaining distance from infantry proved impractical in Europe's close terrain. Forests, villages, hedgerows, and mountains provided countless concealed firing positions. Infantry escorts, while theoretically sound, slowed operations and required forces German divisions increasingly couldn't spare. Avoiding urban areas prohibited operations in strategically vital locations. Every countermeasure degraded operational effectiveness in ways that compounded across the army. The bazooka's success influenced German weapon development, with tragic consequences for Germany's war effort. Resources poured into developing super-heavy tanks, the Tiger II, Jag Tiger, Maus, that would be theoretically impervious to shaped charge weapons. These projects consumed engineering talent, manufacturing capacity, and critical materials that might have been employed more productively. The vehicles that resulted proved mechanically unreliable, logistically nightmarish, and unsuited to Germany's deteriorating strategic situation. Meanwhile, America continued producing reliable bazookas by the thousands, arming soldiers who destroyed super-heavy tanks as readily as they destroyed standard panzers. The philosophical difference between American and German approaches revealed itself most starkly in production statistics. By war's end, American industry had manufactured approximately 476,000 bazookas of all variants. German factories produced approximately 290,000 Panzerschrecks, but more significantly, America simultaneously produced tanks, aircraft, artillery, vehicles, and weapons in quantities that dwarfed German production. The bazooka represented a fraction of American industrial output. Germany's Panzerschreck program consumed proportionally greater resources from a smaller industrial base. This disparity, replicated across all weapon categories, ensured German defeat regardless of individual weapon quality or tactical skill. By spring 1945, as Allied forces advanced into Germany itself, the bazooka had become ubiquitous. American soldiers carried them routinely. Tank hunting had evolved from specialized mission to standard infantry capability. German tank crews, fighting now on their own soil, faced the ultimate irony. The American weapon, initially captured and dismissed as primitive, had systematically destroyed German armored supremacy. The nation that had pioneered modern armored warfare, that had conquered Europe through blitzkrieg, faced defeat partly because every American soldier potentially carried a 13-pound tube capable of destroying any German tank. The Kummersdorf tests in March 1943 had revealed this future. Hauptmann Werner Schroif, watching that first American rocket penetrate his Panzer III's frontal armor, had understood intellectually what German tankers would learn viscerally across 2 years of increasingly desperate combat. The era of armored invincibility had ended. The age of infantry anti-tank weapons had begun, and Germany, fighting industrial democracy with military aristocracy, would lose that fight as surely as shaped charges penetrated hardened steel. The mathematics proved inescapable. The physics proved unforgiving. The strategic implications proved fatal to German hopes of victory. The weapon that began as a length of tubing and a shaped charge grenade, improvised at Aberdeen Proving Ground by Captain Uhl with wire-coat hanger sights, had fundamentally altered modern warfare. It gave infantry practical means of destroying armor without specialized training or complex equipment. It proved that industrial mass production of adequate weapons defeated craftsmanship production of superior weapons when the quantity disparity grew large enough. Most fundamentally, it demonstrated that American industrial capacity, applied intelligently to practical military problems, could defeat German tactical sophistication and engineering excellence. This lesson, learned at devastating cost by German tankers from Sicily to Berlin, would influence military planning for generations to come. The human dimension of the bazooka's impact appeared in countless personal accounts from German survivors. Feldwebel Karl-Heinz Werthmann, a Tiger commander who fought from Sicily through the Battle of the Bulge, kept a detailed diary that survived the war. His entries traced a psychological journey from confidence to caution to outright fear. July 1943, Sicily, Werthmann wrote, "We are invincible in these Tigers. American weapons bounce off our armor like pebbles." 2 weeks later, lost Müller's Tiger today. American rocket from a building we thought was clear. The crew burned. I can still hear their screaming. By December 1943 in Italy, we advance slowly now, checking every window, every doorway. The Americans could be anywhere with their damned rockets. Sleep is difficult. I dream about the sound they make, that distinctive whoosh before impact. In dreams, the rocket always finds us. The transformation Werthmann described was replicated across German armoured forces. Crews who had charged confidently through Poland and France now advanced with paralysing caution. The psychological burden manifested in physical symptoms. Tank commanders reported nervous exhaustion, insomnia, stress-related illnesses. Unit cohesion suffered as experienced crews were killed or wounded by weapons fired by soldiers they never saw. Replacement crews arrived increasingly young, increasingly poorly trained, facing weapons that had already destroyed thousands of German tanks. The confidence that had driven Blitzkrieg evaporated, replaced by grim determination to survive each engagement. The Battle of Normandy in June 1944 demonstrated how completely the bazooka had altered tactical dynamics. German armoured divisions, theoretically superior to Allied forces in tank quality and crew training, found themselves unable to conduct the mobile operations for which they had been designed. The bocage terrain of Normandy small fields, surrounded by thick hedgerows, created perfect conditions for bazooka teams. American infantry could conceal themselves within meters of roads, waiting for German armour to pass, before firing into vulnerable side or rear armour. German tanks, confined to narrow lanes by bocage terrain, couldn't maintain the distance that might have provided some protection. They couldn't maneuver to avoid fire. They became mobile targets in a killing ground American infantry dominated. Oberst Kurt Meyer, commanding the 12th SS Panzer Division, filed reports to 7th Army Headquarters describing impossible tactical situations. "Our Panthers are superior to American Shermans in direct combat," Meyer wrote on June 15, 1944. But the Americans refuse direct combat. They use infantry with rocket launchers to destroy our tanks before tank versus tank engagement occurs. We lose Panthers to soldiers we never see, firing from positions we cannot suppress. Standard counterattack doctrine requires rapid movement and concentrated force. Both are impossible when every hedgerow potentially conceals anti-tank teams. We must clear terrain meter by meter, losing our mobility advantage and allowing the Americans to dictate engagement terms. Against an enemy wielding such weapons in such terrain, German armour doctrine proves ineffective. The statistical accounting from Normandy validated Meyer's assessment. German armoured divisions sustained catastrophic losses, not primarily from Allied tanks or air power, but from infantry anti-tank weapons. The 21st Panzer Division, reconstituted after destruction in North Africa, lost 60% of its armour strength in the first month of Normandy fighting. 1st SS Panzer Division suffered similar casualties. The elite Panzer Lehr Division, considered one of Germany's finest armoured formations, was effectively destroyed within 6 weeks, with American bazookas accounting for a significant portion of tank losses. These units weren't defeated by superior Allied tanks. They were destroyed by infantry weapons that negated armour's protective advantage. The Pacific Theatre, while less celebrated in bazooka lore, provided even more decisive validation of the weapon's effectiveness. Japanese tanks, with armour measuring 30 to 50 mm maximum, were completely helpless against shaped charge warheads. American Marines discovered bazookas proved equally effective against fortified caves and bunkers. The weapon became Marines' preferred solution for hardened Japanese positions. On Iwo Jima and Okinawa, Marine bazooka teams destroyed Japanese bunkers, pillboxes, and caves with devastating efficiency. The psychological impact on Japanese defenders, already facing overwhelming American firepower, proved severe. No position was safe from weapons that could fire from hundreds of meters away and still penetrate concrete and steel. German military analysts, conducting post-action assessments in late 1944, reached conclusions that would have seemed unthinkable 2 years earlier. General Major Heinz Guderian, father of German armored warfare doctrine, admitted in a November 1944 memorandum that American mass production had created situations where enemy infantry units possessed more anti-tank capability than entire German combined arms formations had possessed in 1940. We conquered France with divisions that had fewer anti-tank weapons than a single American infantry regiment now carries, Guderian wrote. This quantitative superiority has fundamentally altered mechanized warfare. Our tactical doctrine assumed armor provided protected mobility. Enemy infantry weapons now negate that protection, forcing our armor to operate cautiously when doctrine requires aggression. Without the confidence to exploit breakthrough opportunities, armored formations cannot accomplish their designed purpose. The Americans have democratized military power in ways we cannot counter with our industrial capacity. The bazooka's democratization of military power represented perhaps its most significant strategic impact. Traditional military hierarchies concentrated power in specialized units requiring extensive training and expensive equipment. Anti-tank capability belonged to dedicated gun crews with specialized weapons. The bazooka distributed that capability to every soldier. A private with 1 day's training possessed genuine tank-killing power. This fundamentally altered battlefield dynamics. German commanders could no longer calculate enemy anti-tank strength by counting specialized units. Every American soldier was potentially a tank killer. The uncertainty this created proved as damaging as actual losses. The weapon's versatility expanded its impact. Beyond anti-tank roles, soldiers discovered bazookas cleared buildings more safely than close assault. Machine gun nests, sniper positions, roadblocks all became targets for shaped charge rockets. Units competed to acquire extra bazookas beyond authorized allocations. The weapon became American infantry's universal problem solver. Contrast with German weapons proved stark. The Panzerfaust, single-shot and disposable, had limited range and required close approach. The Panzerschreck, while more powerful, proved heavy, cumbersome, and revealed firing positions through massive backblast. The bazooka balanced portability, firepower, and sustainability with elegant efficiency. By late 1944, the bazooka had evolved beyond its original anti-tank mission into a universal infantry support weapon. Field expedient uses multiplied. Some units mounted multiple bazookas on jeeps, creating mobile fire support platforms. One enterprising pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Carpenter, mounted 6 bazookas on his L-4 Grasshopper observation aircraft, achieving confirmed tank kills from the air. These innovations demonstrated American military culture's strength. Practical adaptation using available tools rather than waiting for perfect solutions from higher authority. Training materials from this period showed transformed American confidence. Soldiers learned aggressive tank hunting tactics, using terrain and teamwork to close with armor and destroy it. Emphasis was placed on offense, taking the fight to enemy tanks rather than defensive positions waiting for armor to attack. This represented complete reversal from early defensive doctrine that treated tanks as threats requiring specialized counter-weapons. The bazooka made every soldier a potential tank hunter, transforming psychological dynamics as thoroughly as tactical ones. German countermeasures proved futile across all categories. Distance maintenance was impractical in Europe's close terrain. Infantry escorts slowed operations to pace that negated mechanized warfare's advantages. Urban combat prohibitions paralyzed mobility in strategically vital areas. Every countermeasure degraded effectiveness without providing reliable protection. The bazooka imposed costs German forces couldn't afford while providing advantages American forces exploited ruthlessly. The Eastern Front's final campaigns demonstrated the bazooka's impact in combination with Soviet tactical aggression. Russian infantry, equipped with American weapons through Lend-Lease, showed no hesitation in close-quarters tank combat. German crews reported that Soviet soldiers would fire bazookas at virtually point-blank range, ensuring penetration regardless of armor angle or thickness. The combination of American industrial firepower and Soviet tactical ruthlessness proved devastating. German panzer divisions on the Eastern Front sustained casualty rates approaching 80% in some engagements during 1945. Many losses came from infantry anti-tank weapons rather than Soviet armor or artillery. The strategic accounting revealed transformation's full scope. In 1940, German armored divisions had conquered France with approximately 2,500 tanks. By early 1945, Germany had produced over 25,000 tanks total during the war. Yet German forces were retreating on all fronts, facing imminent defeat. Superior individual tank designs Panthers, Tigers, King Tigers couldn't overcome the mathematical reality that every Allied soldier potentially carried tank-killing capability. The cost-exchange ratio that had seemed elegantly devastating at Kummersdorf in March 1943 proved absolutely fatal by war's end. The final battles in Germany itself demonstrated how completely the bazooka had transformed armored warfare. German tank crews, fighting now to defend their homeland, faced American infantry equipped with improved M9 and M9A1 bazookas firing more reliable, more powerful M6A3 rockets. Urban combat, which German doctrine now prohibited due to prohibitive losses, proved unavoidable as Allied forces fought through German cities. Tank losses mounted catastrophically. Crews that survived reported the same psychological burden Werthmann had described beginning in Sicily. The constant fear that any American soldier in any position might carry the weapon that could kill them with a single shot. Oberst Hans von Luck, whose 21st Panzer Division fought from Normandy to Germany's final defense, summarized the transformation in testimony given after the war. "We began as masters of armored warfare," von Luck stated. "We ended as prey hunted by weapons we couldn't see until too late. The American bazooka destroyed more than our tanks. It destroyed our confidence, our doctrine, our psychological advantage. We learned fear inside our armor, fear that our own weapons couldn't inflict on Allied crews because we lacked similar weapons in similar quantities." This disparity, repeated across all weapon categories, ensured our defeat regardless of how skillfully we fought or how courageously our soldiers died. The legacy extended far beyond World War II's immediate conclusion. Every post-war military recognized that infantry required organic anti-tank capability. The principle that portable weapons could defeat heavy armor became fundamental to military planning worldwide. Modern guided anti-tank missiles descend directly from the bazooka's shaped charge principle, refined through decades of development. The weapon that Captain Uhl improvised from scrap tubing established patterns that continue defining infantry combat today. Production records revealed American industrial depth that German planners had consistently underestimated. Factories without military experience successfully manufactured bazooka components. The weapon's simplicity allowed distributed production that was nearly impossible to disrupt through bombing or sabotage. This demonstrated industrial capacity that would dominate Cold War military competition. The Soviet Union, despite receiving American bazookas through Lend-Lease, developed their own RPG series explicitly to avoid dependence on Western production. These weapons, deployed globally through Cold War conflicts, validated the bazooka's core concept: simple, portable, effective anti-tank weapons that infantry could operate with minimal training. The human cost, measured in German tank crews killed by bazooka fire, proved significant though difficult to quantify precisely. German records from the war's final years were incomplete or destroyed, but available evidence suggests thousands of German tankers died from bazooka attacks across all theaters. More survived to carry memories of the weapon that had transformed them from predators to prey. Post-war German memoirs consistently identified the bazooka as the most psychologically impactful American weapon they faced. Not Allied tanks, not artillery, not air power, but the infantry's rocket launcher that made every encounter potentially fatal. The weapon proved that technological superiority alone couldn't guarantee military success. Mass production, wide distribution, and effective training could overcome qualitative advantages when the quantity disparity grew large enough. This lesson influenced American military planning throughout the Cold War and beyond. The willingness to field adequate weapons in overwhelming numbers, rather than waiting for perfect solutions, characterized American military procurement through subsequent conflicts. German Panzer veterans, interviewed decades after the war, consistently described the bazooka with mixture of professional respect and personal dread. It was elegant in its simplicity, recalled Günther Halm, who had commanded a Tiger in Italy. A tube, a rocket, a shaped charge, nothing sophisticated, nothing that suggested German precision, engineering. Yet it worked perfectly for its purpose, and there were hundreds of thousands of them. We had superior individual tanks. They had superior systems for destroying tanks. In industrial warfare, their approach proved correct. Quantity, properly applied, defeated quality. We learned this lesson at terrible cost. The final statistical accounting supported Halm's assessment. Germany produced approximately 25,000 tanks of all types during World War II. America produced approximately 88,000 tanks, while simultaneously producing nearly 500,000 bazookas. The disparity revealed fundamental strategic realities. Germany was fighting industrial war with insufficient industrial capacity. Superior engineering and tactical skill couldn't compensate for material disadvantage measured in orders of magnitude. The bazooka's success demonstrated that American military strength rested not primarily on individual weapon quality, but on systemic advantages. Industrial capacity to mass-produce effective weapons, logistical capability to deliver weapons globally, training systems creating soldiers who could operate complex equipment with minimal instruction, tactical flexibility encouraging field innovation rather than rigid doctrine. These advantages, exemplified by the bazooka's development and deployment, characterized American military power throughout the 20th century. Looking back from the perspective of 8 decades, the bazooka represents a pivotal moment in military history. It proved that armor's dominance could be challenged by portable infantry weapons. It demonstrated that shaped charge principles could be weaponized effectively at tactical level. It showed that mass production of simple, effective weapons defeated small-scale production of sophisticated weapons when industrial capacity disparities were large enough. Most fundamentally, it validated American military philosophy, emphasizing practical effectiveness over theoretical perfection. German tankers who survived the war carried permanent psychological scars from encounters with American rocket launchers. The distinctive sound of bazooka motor ignition remained etched in memory as the sound that ended German armored supremacy. Men who had conquered Europe in 1940 and 1941 spoke decades later about the fear they felt advancing through Italian villages or Norman hedgerows, knowing that any American soldier in any position might carry the weapon that could kill them. This fear, replicated across thousands of German tank crews, represented victory as complete as any achieved through superior firepower or tactical maneuver. The Kummersdorf tests in March 1943 had revealed these truths to German military analysts, but understanding threat intellectually differed vastly from experiencing it viscerally across 2 years of retreat and defeat. Hauptmann Werner Schroif, who had watched that first American rocket penetrate his Panzer III's frontal armor, survived the war to write his own account. "I knew immediately that nothing would be the same," Schroif wrote in his 1952 memoir. "The mathematics were inescapable. 13 pounds defeating 56 tons, $18 destroying 200,000 Reichsmarks. 1 day's training overcoming years of experience." These inversions violated everything we believed about military superiority, yet they proved absolutely correct. The Americans had created a weapon that rendered our advantages irrelevant. We spent the next 2 years learning just how thoroughly one simple innovation could transform modern warfare. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now and don't forget to subscribe.